we finished the meeting. There's the reception area when you get out. And so he asked the guy behind the desk, hey, do you got a notepad? He goes, listen, the gentleman that just went in for that meeting goes, yeah, could you give this to him when he comes out? So I said, can I see what he wrote on there? So he wrote to the guy who was at Reuters that went into the meeting, and we had the meeting first. It said, better luck next time. See you in New York. That's what he wrote on the note and left it for the guy. Honest to God, true story. And we got the business, too.
Benztown president Dave Chachi Dennis loves radio and all of his radio friends.
Hey, Chachi. Hey, everybody.
Because Chachi loves everybody.
My next guest is widely known in the radio industry. He's been featured in Radio Inc.'s 40 Most Powerful People in Radio. He's held many prestigious positions, including Director of Affiliate Sales for Westwood One, the Head of Affiliate Sales and Operations for the Cumulus Media Network, and the Chief Revenue Officer for Sun and Fun Media. He's worked with industry icons such as Norm Patitz, Peter Kozan, and Craig Kitchen. He currently serves on the board of the Museum of Broadcast Communication. He's the co-chairman of the Radio Hall of Fame and the COO for Key Networks and Sun and Fun Media. Please welcome Dennis Green.
Chachi, an absolute pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I bugged you. How do I get on the Everybody Loves Chachi podcast? And I'm here. I mean, this is amazing. Thank you.
You are, man, and thank you for wanting to be on it. I appreciate you taking the time. We've known each other since I was a programmer, so for quite some time, and it's been interesting to you've taught me so much about the network side, and it's really kind of interesting to kind of compare for me and contrast the difference between network and local radio. It's all radio, of course, but there's definitely different nuances, and we certainly wouldn't be here if it weren't for your support over the years and everything you did for us, especially when you were over at Cumulus and Citadel. So thank you for that. We'll get more into that as we dive into this a bit deeper. But tell me a little bit about your first gig at WGN. I mean, that's a heck of a place to start off your career.
It was probably I elaborate, maybe a little dramatic. It may be the best job I ever had. They paid me $3 an hour and all the old style beer I could take out of the prize closet and Archway home style cookies, the big cookie with the small town taste. You get to work with icons. I mean, it was Roy Leonard. It was Bobby Collins. It was Wally Phillips in the morning. I mean, my first job there, I handled, Traffic Central, and we produced for the traffic helicopters, of which GN, just to tell you how it was back then, GN Radio flew 2 traffic helicopters in morning and afternoon drive. And so my job was to do the Central one. So we called the times up to the helicopter. And my first day on the job, I was doing morning drive, and the copter called in and goes, one to Central, we're going to have to set down in the woods. The helicopter crashed.
No, are you serious?
I had to call Wayne Vriesman, who was the GM, and get him out of bed at his house saying, this is Dennis Green, sir. I'm your new guy here, and your helicopter just went down in the woods.
Is everybody okay?
Nobody. Yeah, they were fine because as Flying Officer Jim Kavanaugh, who was one of the traffic reporters, said, I couldn't go down today. I had the winning lottery ticket in my back pocket. I just knew it.
What happened? Was it like an engine malfunction?
They blew a turbine or something. And I remember fortunately we had 2 copters because it was morning drive. So we covered someone usually covered north or south part of the Chicagoland, and then someone covered the west suburbs. East you wouldn't cover because you'd be in Lake Michigan. So, John Camden, who was the other officer, said, I'll have to handle the 720 because, the other guy's going to have to set down in the woods. I'm like, okay, John, it's all you. I'll let Marilyn, Wally, producer, know, don't throw it to Jim. He's crash landing. So
that is a crazy story.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, I knew I wanted to be in this business after that. And,
how do you extract a helicopter from the woods?
Well, they were able to set it down without it crashing. So,
okay.
Of course, the worst part of the story was after I had my last communication with him and we gave the report. I get back on the radio and I'm like, Traffic Central 1. Traffic Central, and I hear, and you hear radio silence, and I'm like, he's dead. Is someone going to call me back and say, what the hell? And finally raised me back on the radio and said, is someone going to send a car to pick me up? And I said, there's nobody available right now. There's too much traffic. We'll be out there when we can. And so he was all like, I can't believe it. It's what I do for this company.
So when I think of, WGN, I mean, you're working right there in the heart of Chicago. How old are you at this point?
I was 20.
Jeez, man. And then, that's Harry Carey's calling the Cubs games, right? That's all that
Harry Carey, Vince Lloyd, Lou Boudreau, working with legendary guys, a guy by the name of Jack Rosenberg, who ran the network, who was very kind to me. It was interesting. And Jack Brickhouse, another Hall of Fame broadcaster, who would come in and, you'd see these guys walking the hallways and you'd be like, well, he's not going to talk to me. I'm some 20-year-old kid from Indiana University. What the hell do I know? But they all, and I always remembered that. I said, as I got through the business, if I ever was able to help, and I know you're very big on this, the young broadcasters, the young generation aspiring to come forward, I would always do everything I could to help, because I learned that from them, because they would take time and talk to you. I mean, they didn't have to talk to the kids, like, hey, let me tell you about this, and make sure they'd give you tips on, make sure you're a good listener, make sure that you arrive on time, make sure that you return phone calls, treat people like you want to be treated. I mean, just having to impart that knowledge and wisdom on you that you took with you to the next phase of your career. It was amazing. A lot of the things I still say, things I learned there almost 40 years ago, I still employ that today, because it's good, it's sound advice. And the main thing is that I always tell folks, don't give up, or I shouldn't say give up. Make sure you spend time to impart that knowledge on the next generation, and hope they'll do it as well, if not better than you did. I mean, I've got, as you know, my 23-year-old son, Max, is, I guess, following in my footsteps, although he's working at Sirius XM and Bloomberg doing audio editing and board opping. And he calls and tells me how things are going. And I'm like, well, look, you're going to figure it out for yourself, but do this. Make sure you get in front of people, tell people what you want to do. And remember and realize people can learn from you. I mean, I'm always like, tell me something about, if you're an 18 to 24-year-old that I can learn, because I don't know what goes on. My kid reminds me all the time. He goes, Dad, you're clueless. You don't know anything. I'm like, well, I don't know anything. In your generation, I'm an old guy now. I'm out of the 25, 54. What am I doing? What do I know?
I'm close to being out of the demo as well. So you are in Chicago. You land your first gig there. What a phenomenal opportunity in internship. And then you move to Gable City network, and you actually work a little bit in cable TV. Tell me a little bit about that transition and what made you interested in that part of the business.
So I wanted to do television. I really always wanted radio, but I said, well, I got to do television because, I mean, this face belongs in front of a camera. I mean, let's face it. Well, if you ever saw the movie Wayne's World, which I'm sure you did, before there was Wayne's World, there was Gable City Network, Channel 49. There were 3 people. I worked for a guy by the name of Mike Mustard. That was his name, Colonel Mustard, we used to call him. He was the video production manager. And there was one other gentleman who was a immigrant from Havana, Cuba, that didn't speak a lot of English, but he did all of our production stuff. And then there was me, who was at first part-timer. And the only reason I got the job, when I got done with WGN and I wanted to find something else, I was applying everywhere. I was looking for jobs, and I was home one day watching the television and flipping the channels at that point. I stumble across Channel 49, and they're doing some high school football game. And I see this guy calling the game, and I said, this guy stinks. He's horrible. So I don't know. I got the yellow pages out. Right. And I look up, I got to find this Gable City Network. So I find it and I call the number, and Mike Mustard answers, and I'm like, hi, my name's Dennis Green. I was born and raised in Coral Gables, Florida. I'm a resident here. I graduated from Indiana University. I tell him my story. I said, I was watching your broadcast, and I said, I got to tell you, the guys you have on there really aren't very good. He goes, you think you're so good? I'm like, let me tell you something. I may not be Brent Musburger, but compared to those guys, I'm freaking Howard Cosell and Brent Musburger combined. I don't know what possessed me to do it. So he goes, well, if you're so good, come down to the office. Let's meet you. So I put a suit and a tie on. I literally live 5 minutes from this place. I drive down there. They were in the police station of in the basement of the police station of Coral Gables, Florida. I go knock at the door, and it's like one of those moments when you throw the door open, kind of like in Animal House when they came in and like, like the one guy walks in. So I open the door. I see this guy wearing like ripped jeans and a shirt with mustard on it. And that's just Mike Mustard. And I'm wearing a suit and a tie. And they look at me, may I help you? I'm like, hi, I'm Dennis Green. I'm the guy who called about your great production. And so they told me, show up. We're doing a Little League football game that Saturday. So I showed up and I do my broadcast. I go meet the coaches. I get the lineups and I broadcast one game and they said, okay, clearly you've got experience in this. So we're going to hire you part-time. And I did high school football. I did University of Miami on Rev Sports.
And you're doing play-by-play.
Play-by-play. I ended up doing color commentary for some stuff. I got involved with the Junior Orange Bowl committee. So I was the host of the Junior Orange Bowl parade. I have something in common with Anita Bryant. She was the former host of the Junior Orange Bowl parade once upon a time.
Was she really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Where did you learn how to do play-by-play? I mean, that's a whole art in and of itself.
Well, at Indiana University at WIUS, the campus station, you're an Indiana University student, 6:20 a.m. on the dial, pumping more wattage into your cottage. I used to do the Indiana football and basketball games. As a matter of fact, my big claim to fame, the Bob Knight game where he threw the chair.
Right.
I was broadcasting that game. The chair went right by me because I was sitting on row one, and the voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fisher, who's still the voice of the Hoosiers 45 years later. I look over to him and he's like, I don't know what to tell you, kid. And I'm just like, we're not going to say anything because, Assembly Hall's crazy. Bob Knight has thrown a chair and he's gone nuts. And so I was there for that game. I got to see it. I was probably, 50 feet from the chair going by me.
And at this point, you're sold. You're doing two things that you love. I mean,
well, this is it. I mean, I was a pre-law major. I was political science, and I was sitting in my political science lecture hall, and I saw this notice on the wall, and it said, are you interested in radio? WIUS is having a meeting. And I'm like, wow. So I remember they had the little things that you would rip the phone number off. So I ripped it off and I called and they said, yeah, come to the meeting. So I went to the meeting and they said, well, we're going to put you on the air doing sportscasts. I'm like, wow, I didn't know you could do that. Okay. So I started doing it. And I remember I called my parents. I said, I'm switching my major. They said, to what? I said, to communications. They go, what are you going to do with that? I said, well, I keep mentioning Brent Musburger because I look at Brent Musburger and Al Michaels. I mean, they're making millions of dollars. Like, well, that's two people. I mean, how are you going to get a job like that? I'm like, I'll figure it out. My dad, he never went to college. Like he said, my college was World War II. You think you got it hard, so he says, my mom said, you're not going to switch your major. You can add telecom, but you have to keep your political science. So I had a telecom political science double major. What I ever did with the political science is nothing. So that was it. I got the bug and I loved working it, got the WGN thing, and then went and did Channel 49 with the Wayne's World. It really was. We worked out of a paddy wagon. That was our production trailer. The city gave them the old and here was the best thing about the paddy wagon. If you've been in a paddy wagon, it's all metal. So we had the XLR cables laying on metal, and like you'd listen to our games and you'd hear this like a 3 dB hum, and you're like, what is that? I'm like, well, it's because you got metal on metal. It's the worst. You can't have a paddy wagon as the production trailer. What is that?
And then you go back. So you start in Florida. You grow up in Florida. You go to Indiana. You do your internship at WGN, and then you go back to Illinois to get a master's in sports administration.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a good story behind that, too. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. So as I'm trying to get out of Channel 49, I ended up there 5 years. I was up for a job in Hattiesburg, Mississippi at a CBS affiliate because I figured this will be my big break. Because I was sending in my little tapes and reading Broadcasting and Cable Yearbook and looking for jobs because that's what you had to do before Indeed.com. Are they sponsoring this, by the way? No. Anyway.
Not yet. Not yet.
No, well, they should. Anyway, I call up and the guy says, you're a finalist. It's you and another guy. And I had already taken the GRE and the GMATs because I thought, if I can't get anything else, I'll go back to school. I'll figure something out. So I called the guy And I thought, wow, this is it. I'm going to get this job. I'm going to resign here. By the way, I was making $25,000 a year in 1990 at this point at the Channel 49. And this job was going to pay me $12,500 in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which I thought I can afford the pay cut. I mean, what could it cost to live in Hattiesburg? They got McDonald's and Burger King. I'll figure it out. The guy calls me the next day, goes, you were impressive. I loved your resume. Everything was great. I gave the job to somebody else, and it was a tough call. I flipped a coin, and I said, I didn't even get to call it. I mean, what the heck is that? So I told him, you did me a favor. And I called the University of Illinois, Chicago, where I had applied, and I asked if they still had a spot. And they said, we're going to grant you probationary status. And I said, good, hold my spot. I packed my car. I drove to Chicago, rented an apartment, and then I got a job at the sports information department writing press releases. And they said, we can't pay you. I said, I got a great idea. You're going to pay for my tuition. Well, we got to petition the athletic director. I said, petition who you want. Just pay for my master's degree, and I'll figure out the rest of it. Not only did they pay for the master's degree, they gave me an $8,000 stipend. I thought I was living on top. So I went from making $25,000 to making $8,000 and eating Campbell's soup out of a bowl and basically having no life for a year and a half. But I got my master's degree. It looks great on the wall, and it's fantastic.
What was the reason to go and get your master's? That was something your parents wanted you to do, or you just felt like you needed it?
I always wanted to get it. It was a personal thing for me. I've always loved sports. I wanted to figure out how I could be involved in sports. And I thought, well, sports management, sports administration, I could get a job with a team or an athletic conference, which ultimately I did, working for the Mid-Continent Conference as the director of corporate development, which was my first foray into sales, which I guess led me to what I ultimately did, and found I was decent at it. You know, we had a small conference. If you're folks that are listening are fans, Cleveland State University, Wright State, Northern Illinois, Valparaiso, they were all in the league. And my job was to sell our radio network we had. And I'll get to how that led to the next thing after a bit. We also had Sports Channel America. We were selling commercials there. And then we had sponsorships for athletic scholarship programs. We had a Baskets for Books program. So my job was to go to get the official water was Evian, the official power supplement was Power Bar. Enterprise Rental Car was our official rental car.
Those are big clients, though. So are you going to agencies?
I was going direct to the clients. And that's funny. I learned that I could be good at this because the Wright State University thing was interesting. The guy who was the Midwest regional for Enterprise, by the way, this is before NCAA ever, you see Enterprise, they're always a big NCAA partner. Before that, I think their first deal was with me at the Mid-Continent Conference in 1992.
No kidding.
The guy was a Wright State grad, and in our offices, we had posters of all the different schools, and Wright State was in Division II and had won the Division II national title. And the guy came in, I can't remember his name, and he said, my roommate was on that team. That was like, we won the national title. So I told my boss, the commissioner of the league at the time, Jerry Apollotti, I said, I need that poster. He goes, why? He goes, I can get us a big time sponsorship with Enterprise. I know I can. And then I called the athletic director at Wright State. I go, I'm going to send this poster to you. I need you to get as many signatures on that poster from that team as possible, because I'm sure a lot of those guys still live in Dayton. So I sent him the poster, got signatures on it. I called this guy. I had it wrapped in like butcher paper. And I called this guy and said, hey, on your way home, it's a Friday, stop by. I'd like to show you something. And he goes, well, I said, on your way home. So a guy stopped by the office, and I said, listen, I had a guy that could do this. I wanted to just give this to you. I thought it might be something you'd like. He opens it up, and it's the poster, was signed not by everybody, but and he goes, how did you get this? I said, I made a call to the athletic director. He goes, you don't understand. This is like, the guy was like ready to cry. It was unbelievable. Wow. Within 2 weeks, Enterprise Rental Car was the official rental car of the Mid-Continent Conference. I'm like, this is how this stuff works. I can do this.
I mean, that's, I think, such a great lesson. I think so much of this business today is relationship based, and to have that foresight being as young as you were and to go and land an account of that magnitude is really impressive. Is that the first like official sale you made?
No, it was the first big one.
Big, okay.
But I had done a lot of little stuff. like trying to think of some of the folks we had. Sprint.
That's right. That's
before,
impressive.
that just gives you an idea of what it was.
Yeah.
We ended up getting Oldsmobile to bring a car into the lobby of the Rosemont Horizon in Chicago where our tournament was. And so people could walk by the car. Cause I remember I get a call from Leo Burnett agency. They're like, we understand from the regional guy at Oldsmobile that you want to have a sponsor this tournament. I said, yeah. Well, where are your numbers? I go, what numbers? They go, your numbers. I go, I don't need numbers. We're a college athletic conference. I just know that we're going to sell 10,000 tickets to this thing. And so 10,000 people are going to walk by your car for 3 days. And they're like, we can't recommend this. So I called the guy back at Oldsmobile. I said, well, can you tell the guys at Leo Burnett you want to do this? I mean, it's inexpensive. It's like for the cost of selling a few cutlasses, you can have the sponsorship. Right. So it's Cutlass, and they used to tell you Oldsmobile for Oldsmobile. So
that was probably that was the tipping point for the brand.
I'm telling you, man. After that, they shut down Oldsmobile, Pontiac, and all that was left was Buick and Chevy. So there you go.
At this point, you've done sales, you've been on air. Are you starting to get more of are you missing being on air, or you've got more of kind of a taste to do sales?
I missed it, and I got to do a little bit because a guy by the name of Les Grobstein, who recently passed away, a legendary Chicago sportscaster, he was the voice of the MidCon, and I would go out on the road with him to do color commentary on some of the MidCon game of the week. So we went to Eastern Illinois, we went to Notre Dame to do the Notre Dame Valpo game, and so I was set up those games, and he would be the play-by-play. I'd be the color. We'd drive to the game together, got to know him, and I enjoyed it. I really did. I don't know if I was good enough. I don't know if people thought I was good enough. I liked it, but as each year was going by, I was realizing I'm going to make a life for myself and have dollars in the bank if I do the sales side of it, because not too many people rose to that level. And, when I started, there was no ESPN2. ESPN was running like Australian rules football games. There was no Fox Sports. You didn't have all the different outlets that you have today. So maybe I was ahead of my time, and maybe I would have had a better opportunity with more outlets, because the place where you tried to get jobs were these little local cable operations, or if you were fortunate, you try to get a job at the local ABC, NBC, or CBS affiliate. There wasn't a Fox affiliate because there was no Fox.
Kind of all patched together, these different networks and different regions and so forth. And so you head from there, you then become the head of operations and affiliate relations for the Illinois and Wisconsin radio network.
Yeah, so how that came about was funny, because I was getting our satellite time from the Illinois radio network, and a guy by the name of Jim Roberts, who was then at ESPN for many years and became a friend. I learned something when I was in Chicago. You can actually get pulled over for BWI. You know what that is? That's biking while under the influence. Because it happened to me and my buddy, because there was a bar that used to serve $1 Rolling Rocks on Thursday. So we used to go at this bar, and we'd get for $10, you get 10 Rolling Rocks. Well, you drink 10 Rolling Rocks. I get on my bike, and I'm trying to ride my bike back to my apartment. I'm like bouncing up the sidewalk, and I'm like, and Jim's like, hey, we're lucky we didn't go to jail. That cop, BWI. I'm like, BWI? Like,
so you guys get pulled over?
Biking while under the influence.
Unbelievable. And you didn't get arrested or anything? You just let you go?
No, I didn't get arrested. Just told that I should not be out riding my bike if I'm,
I guess you're really just more of a danger to yourself than anybody else on your bicycle.
Pretty much, running into parked cars on the street. But we got our satellite time there and got to be friends. And he said, listen, I'm taking a job at the Texas State Network. My job's going to be open. Are you interested? I said, you know what? Because the conference was changing, just like college athletics is going through the changes now. At that time, the Mid-Continent merged, I think, 7 of the teams into something called the Horizon League. And we were left with schools like University of Missouri, Kansas City, Northeastern Illinois, which I don't even think exists anymore. So we lost all of our good schools, and I'm like, this isn't going to work. And the commissioner left, went to the Mid-America Conference, which was in Toledo, which I wasn't going to move to Toledo. I knew everything I needed to know about Toledo because at the time my fiance Jill was from Toledo.
Oh, okay.
So I
it's
said,
Toledo.
That's not happening. So I said, sure, I'd be interested. He goes, get here tomorrow morning. You'll meet the owners. I got there at 9 a.m., met the owners. 10 a.m., we finished the interview. They offered me the job, and I said, well, I got to go back. They said, we'll fax you the offer to the office. I got back to my office. They faxed it to me. I resigned by noon that day, and I then got back into radio to stay for the rest of my days and hopefully for as long as the business will have me. But it was great. You did everything you did at the national level, on the state level. I'd drive around the state to the stations, and we were selling our news network, our sports network. We did specialty shows like Illinois Byways, and you got sponsorships from the Illinois Tourism Bureau. You get it from the Illinois Lottery, et cetera. We did the Wisconsin Badger Hockey Network. We did the Chicago Blackhawks networks. It was fun. I really enjoyed the work. As a matter of fact, to this day, I still go back to NASRN, the National Association of State Radio Networks, which has 30 plus networks affiliated with it. I do a lot of business with them here. I did also during my days at Westwood, and I enjoyed a lot of people that still work there at the State Radio Network, and they're great broadcasters, and they provide a great service. So it was a lot of fun.
Now you've done on air, you've done sales, advertising sales, and now you're head of operations. So you're in a management position, plus you're doing affiliate relations. Is this the first time you're actually going and selling the network and the programming to local stations?
Yeah, that's the first time I was able to do that officially. I mean, I did it for the Mid-Continent Conference with their basketball network, but I was doing the news affiliation. We did the election night coverage. So everything's soup to nuts. We were driving around the stations, and this is pre-consolidation. So barter was not what it is today. I mean, you'd come in and they'd say, well, how much does it cost? I'm like, can you give us 5 minutes a day? Sure, no problem. Send over the contract. Okay, great. I don't even know if they ran the spots or not, but they signed up. And we sent them. And the funny thing was, I remember this is to tell you about the technology. One of our sponsors was Amtrak, and we had to do, for every stop on the Amtrak from Chicago down to Carbondale, Illinois, we had to send a tails out reel of the spot. And it was geared towards Springfield, Illinois, or it was geared toward, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of all the different stops along the way. Danville, Illinois. Yeah, but it wasn't copy split because there was no copy split, and we didn't have another technological way to do it. So we had to cut the reels and send them out and mail them to the stations. Each week. Yeah. Let me tell you, one thing about that operation is the word jerry rig. That was what we lived
So
by.
you're physically sending the spots on a CD?
Actually, no, on a reel to reel.
On a reel to reel.
So it was a reel. Sorry, I don't know what he's.
That's okay.
Okay. Anyway, no, we sent it on a reel and tails out, and then they would have to then take it and put it into their system automation or put it onto a cart on their end because we weren't sending carts out.
By the way, a look at a real behind the scenes picture of what Dennis Green goes through in his gig. You want to pick that up? I'm curious who it is. Who calls Dennis Green?
You want to know who that is? It's another friend of yours from the old days. It's Neil Bird.
I love Neil Bird. Tell him I say hello. What's he up to, by the way?
I will. He's working here at Sun and Fun
Media. Oh, he is? I didn't know that. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Please tell him I said hi. Is he still living here in L.A.?
Still living there in L.A. He had our other good friend, Max Krasny, hang out and play cards, I think, every week. You got to get him in that game. I hear good things happen.
I don't know if I could afford that game with those guys.
Well, yeah, Krasny, he's big time. Apparently, Billy Bush was in that game for a while, too.
That is a heavy game.
Because, Krasny became very good friends with him.
Yeah, they are good buds. I knew that. Yeah, he's a good man. Affiliate Sales Director, Westwood One. Where and how did you hear about that gig?
There's always a story. So I get a call. Jim Roberts, the aforementioned guy that went down to the Texas State Network, calls me and goes, hey, I put your name down as a reference. I'm up for a job as G. Gordon Liddy's affiliate guy. Because at the time, Westwood, they had a staff of, I think, without exaggeration, over 40 people in affiliate sales.
Oh my
Actually, it was
gosh.
affiliate relation before they changed it to affiliate sales. There's a story behind that too. But Bob Dane was the guy who was hiring. Jim put my name down, so Bob calls me, and I give him the reference on Jim. And he goes, by the way, what's your availability? I see you're in the affiliate game. I said, yeah, I'm at state radio here in Illinois, Wisconsin. He goes, well, did you ever think about doing something nationally at Westwood One? I said, the Westwood One? Is that possible? He goes, well, yeah, we're looking for some people. And so I'm thinking to myself, so my buddy calls me for a reference, and now I'm going to start pitching a job myself. But he said, well, I have other options. It doesn't have to be for G. Gordon Liddy's guy. I said, well, I'm living in Chicago. He goes, well, we have an office there. That's fine. And P.S., Jim did not take the job, and they ended up hiring me in the Chicago office as their affiliate guy. And so that's how I started at Westwood One, working for the guys in Arlington, Virginia, where Larry King did his show. And I was syndicating Larry King, Imus, Mike Walker, the great Mike Walker, Jim Bohannon, a dear friend who we lost last year, Bruce Williams, gosh, who else did we have at that time? I mean, legendary guys, all of them, that were.
And this is like really
the
golden era of syndication, and Westwood One is the top of that podium.
Oh, it was, when I told people I was going to Westwood One, it was amazing. Getting to work with Norm and getting to know Norm, who was a mentor, to me. And, we miss him dearly. Well, the business misses him, and we miss him also. He was such a great guy. Working with him and all the different folks at Westwood. Mel was involved, obviously, when when Norm sort of took a back seat, and then it was Mel and Fareed, and then it was Joel. And there's a litany of people that came through. Like I always say, I think I worked for more CEO presidents of Westwood than there have been presidents of the United States, and it may not be that far of an exaggeration. It was amazing. When they merged CBS Radio with it in 1997, I remember it was Black Monday, and everybody was getting a call and getting fired. And I'm sitting in Chicago, and I'm like, I don't want to answer the phone. I don't know what the heck the deal is. And I finally got a call from Nick Kiernan, who was running CBS at the time, and he goes, good news, you're not fired. We just don't know what we're going to do with you. So go home, enjoy the afternoon, and tomorrow come back, call me, and we'll figure it out. So they kept me, but my boss and a number of my colleagues all got fired.
Why were they getting fired? They just weren't happy with the results?
No, they were downsizing. It was CBS. CBS guys were the ones we thought Westwood was going to be the lead, but it was the CBS guys that took charge.
Oh, okay.
And, the disappointment for me was I was handling Chicago, Detroit, all of the big markets around the Midwest, Minneapolis. And they called me and they said, well, your biggest market now is going to be Indianapolis. Like, okay, well, Indianapolis is fine, but what about Chicago, Detroit, Minneapolis? Nope, you can't have those anymore. Now you get Des Moines, Wichita, Omaha, which, okay, it was fine, except, when you get to a point where you're moving up, you want to talk to the guys in the bigger markets. And they wouldn't allow me to do it. I literally would see people in Chicago and they say, what's going on with you? I'm like, well, I'm working at Westwood. Well, we never hear from you. Well, that's because your guy is in New York. So they had the New York guy handling Chicago. They had Washington being handled by New York, even though they had people in Washington. It was a mess. And then when they merged it, because Westwood was set up as divisions. I was on the News Talk division originally, but there was the 24/7 formats out of Valencia. There was the entertainment division. There was the sports division. And what they did was they merged everybody together. So I was selling News and Talk, 24/7 formats, sports, entertainment, everything. I don't know how, I couldn't keep it straight. It was great for the client because if that was your market, say it was Wichita, if you wanted something from Westwood, you had to call me. I had everything, but people would call me and I'd be like, wait, I got a guy on line 2 that wants a classic country format. I got a guy on line 3 that wants the NFL package. I got a guy on line 4 that wants G. Gordon Liddy and Tom Leykis. It was like, it was too much. We had like 200 different products, and to keep it all straight was, was no easy task. So that lasted for not very long. They ultimately got rid of all the CBS guys, but I then got a call from our friend Peter Kosan, who I met when I was at the Illinois Radio Network. And that's a great story about Peter. He probably wouldn't like me telling some of the stories, but I'm going to take the liberty anyway, because I've known him longer than everybody else in the business. He had a full head of hair. He came to see me because we were using a product called Zap News, and it went bankrupt. So I needed a news feed for the state network. And so I called one of our affiliates. He goes, call this Bloomberg thing in New York. I go, Bloomberg, and I don't even know what it is. It's just like the 94. And so I called and I get this guy, Peter Costa. He's like, I'm like, listen, I understand you've got this news product. He goes, yeah, I'm going to fly out and show it to you. I'm like, you don't have to fly out. Just tell me. No, I'm going to come out. I'm going to fly out. And so he flies to Chicago. He shows me the Bloomberg terminal. I never got to see it work, by the way.
Wow.
He then tells me, we're going to put a satellite dish on your roof and you'll be able to bring Bloomberg News in at the top of the hour. I'm like, okay, what's it cost? Well, we figure that out. Like, what do you mean? How many? Well, we take barter, we'll do it. You run 6 a.m. to midnight. If you have to run a little extra overnight, don't worry. Okay. So we did the deal. All I can tell you is we had more technical problems with that thing. Every other week something went on, and Peter was like, I don't know about that. Call this guy over here. I can't deal with that. I'm on to the next thing. Well, we got to be friendly, and Wheezy Kramer was running WMAQ Chicago, who was an affiliate of the Illinois network. And he goes, how do I get Bloomberg on WMAQ? Because I can't get on BBM. I said, well, you got to go through Wheezy. I mean, she's tough. He goes, I can get that done. So he flies out here and he goes, I said, you're never getting on MAQ. There's no way. He goes, well, if I get on MAQ, what's it to you? I said, we'll steak dinner at Michael Jordan's in Chicago. So it took him about a month, and he called back. He goes, when do you want to book that dinner? I said, the dinner for what? The one you're buying me at Michael Jordan's. I said, you got MAQ for Bloomberg? He did. And I remember saying to Wheezy, I go, how in the world did that happen? He goes, I think that guy's Jesus Christ. She just thought he was amazing, which ultimately, that's how he got hired to run Westwood, because Wheezy was the one that told Joel, you got to hire this guy Costa, and he's unbelievable. He left Bloomberg to go to Westwood, and he ended up bringing me back to Westwood then. I guess I erased the part. I kind of skipped around a little bit, but I got to know Peter from the state network. And my point was, when everything went down at Westwood with the CBS merger, he called, he goes, listen, I need you in New York. I want you to come work here and do Bloomberg. I'm like, why am I going to move to New York? I had just gotten married. I'd bought a condo in Chicago. I was happy there. And he goes, nope, I'm sending you a ticket. You're going to fly in. We'll introduce you to Mike Bloomberg. I'm sending you his book. Read his book. So I fly to New York. I do the whole song and dance. He makes an offer. I think he flew me in on a Sunday, made an offer on Monday. I said, nah. He goes, go back to the hotel, come back tomorrow. We'll keep there. Gives me another offer. I was like, nah. I'm like, he's not going to let me leave till I take the job. So he finally goes, look, this is what we're going to do. You take the job. It's going to be fine. Don't worry. It's all good. So I take the job. And I remember calling my wife on the way back, and I said, how do you feel about New York? She goes, what did you do? I said, I asked you first. She goes, did you take a job? I said, I might have. She goes, well, what if I don't want to move there? I'm like, then I guess it's been a good run. I don't know. So we sold our condo. We sold our cars right before Thanksgiving and moved on January 1st of 1998, moved to New York to work for Bloomberg and work for Peter doing Bloomberg Media for 3 years. It was loved it, absolutely loved it.
So now you're in New York and you're working for Bloomberg, and you're the head of affiliate relations at that point?
Well, there were no titles at Bloomberg. So if you know anything about that operation, it was very much like Google. Before there was Google, we all sat in an open room area. There were no walls. There were no offices. And I traveled 4 days every week. Of course, I remember I was only Peter could sell you, because he could sell you anything. He was the best. I'll tell you a funny story. My best story ever at Bloomberg I want to tell you about. But after he got me to move, and come to a small 800 square foot apartment on the Upper East Side from my 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo, which I was paying double for in New York. And he told me this is going to be great. I said, I'm glad I got such a big raise because now I can afford to pay the rent. But he told me that you're going to be traveling a lot. And I didn't know. I said, there'll be some travel. I traveled 4 days every week for 3 years, to the point when my wife got pregnant. She goes, you're going to have to get another job or I'm like a single mom. I was never home. I would leave on Monday, come back Friday. And at Bloomberg, I handled Bloomberg Television, Bloomberg Print, Bloomberg Digital. At the time, they were very early adapters in the internet. Of course, Bloomberg Radio. So we handled all of that. So if I was in charge of Kansas City, I would fly in and see KMBZ Radio. I'd see Channel 9. I'd go see the Time Warner guy about Bloomberg Television and try to get it on. I would go to the Kansas City Star to see them because we had a deal through the print division. So it was multimedia. We did everything. And then when I proved myself, Peter said, what do you know about Canada? I said, they play hockey there. He goes, congratulations, you're now in charge of Canada. He drops a thing on my desk. He goes, go up there and figure out what we're doing. I go, I flew up there. I met the bureau chief and I said, well, let's come up with a way to use some of your reporters to do reports for Canada on Bay Street, which is the Wall Street. It's in Toronto. So we created an office there and we sold reports to CTV, Ontario Television, 680 News, which is like the 1010 Wins of Toronto. So I was in charge of all of that in Canada. I was going to Montreal, going to Toronto, Vancouver, Shaw Communications in Calgary, you name it. It was great. I really loved it. And, it affirmed for me that that's what I really wanted to do with my career, was to go and there's nothing like seeing the broadcasters. Doing a Zoom, getting on the phone is one thing, but going and sitting in a studio or sitting in a facility. And Chachi, the one thing, people are so proud when you go visit them. They're like, hey, do you have a minute? I want to show you my facility. And I always used to remember people say, gosh, I don't have time for this. I got to leave. I would always say, absolutely, I'd love to see it, because they want to show it off. They're proud of it. And if you show that same level of interest, it just means that much to them. Hey, this guy really is not full of what. He really seems to be interested. And I think part of that comes from Channel 49 and, driving the trailer, pulling the cables, doing the same thing at the campus station, wanting to learn about the technological side, how the sausage is made, as they say, how it gets up into the air, how it gets distributed, and seeing everybody has a different way of doing it for the most part. But at the end of the day, it's all about great content, and it's all about getting it to sound good, getting it to be something the audience wants, and getting something that the advertisers will be proud to sponsor. It's all those things.
No, it's a great piece of advice, and I agree 100% with you. So much of it is relationship, and like we were talking about earlier, and the fact that you were on the road as much as you were and able to really harvest those relationships is something I think in a lot of ways today is lost, and makes it harder when you do what you and I do to do that business. Just like we're doing right now, this is great, but there's just something missing virtually that you can't get in a actual human to human interaction. So in 2000, Peter goes to Westwood One and then hires you to oversee the affiliate relations there?
He hired me to come in. Well, I had turned down a quick backstory. When he first went back to, his first trip to Westwood was in 99. And he offered me a gig to come back and have a more senior position. And he had me meet with Joel Hollander, and I turned the job down. And he called me up and goes, what the hell are you doing? You're dead to him. If you tell those guys no. And sure enough, things did not go as well at Bloomberg afterwards. For me personally, I had wanted to get Peter's job. I didn't get it, but I liked what I was doing. So they kind of left me alone to do my thing, but I was looking to get out. And I was in Toronto when Peter called and said, okay, I can get you in, but there's not going to be much negotiation. Get on a plane, get back here, and meet me at Wolf's Deli on 57 tomorrow morning. So I came back, met him at 7 a.m., and by 7:30, I had a deal to come back and oversee the News Talk syndication. So I wasn't over all of it for I think 3 years later, they put me in charge of affiliate sales of the whole shooting match. Once Peter had elevated to, head of sales and then eventually CEO of Westwood. So I came back in that role, which was great. I got to work with a lot of the same shows that I worked with before, Don and Mike, Tom Likas, Ron and Fez, if you remember that show,
sure,
on the FM Talk side of things. Opie and Anthony. I got to be there through the Sex and St. Pat's. That was fantastic.
Oh, man.
Not really. The news product, because I may be the one person in this industry that I did ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, Mutual. I don't think there's a news network that I did not represent at some point in my career. I had the good pleasure of working with a dear friend, Bart Tessler, who ran news and talk programming, and we were kind of like the Batman and Robin of him putting the content together and me leading the charge on the affiliation side of things. And I just fond memories, great friends, great people, really enjoyed it quite a bit. And I would think it was 2003 that they came to me. I remember it was Chuck Bortnick was my boss at the time after, Shane Coppola was the CEO who ran Metro, because Metro was then acquired by Westwood. And they told me, we're putting you in charge of all of affiliate sales. So I had the 24/7 networks, sports, news, talk, entertainment. So it was a dream. I never thought, here's a guy who was working at WGN for $3 an hour doing producing, and now I'm running syndication at arguably at the time, if not the top, right there with Premiere, one of the top two radio networks in the country. And it was a blast. I absolutely had just a great time, and we did some great projects. I think, made some good money for the company, and a lot of the things that I learned previously, I used to hone my management skills there. So it was fantastic, and I had a good run up until John and Lou Dickey came a-calling.
So before we get to John and Lou, is Norm Patitz there at this point?
Well, Norm was on the periphery. I guess you would call him the chairman emeritus, because he wasn't running it. Now he came back more in the fold, but I still got a chance to talk to him often, and he always loved to talk to his old guys, if you will. Or you'd go to Culver City, and Norm had his office there, and he'd go upstairs and bless the ring, and you'd see Norm, and he'd check in, how's it going? Because the ones that were around when it was truly Westwood, before it was part of CBS and Infinity, those were his guys. And I was probably on the end part of that, but I still had the fortune that Norm was running the whole thing then. And, with Norm, no one ever told him no, really. He just found a way to get it done. And you learned that you just kept going back. When people would tell you no, they didn't want to take your show, or they didn't want to do something, you just remember Norm saying, no. You go back and find a way. There's always a way. And Norm had a personality. Like, how many people told that guy no? I don't think very many, over the years that he worked, not just in radio, but his other ventures. And, I never got to sit in the Lakers seat. So that's the only thing. Krasny got to sit there. Tessler got to sit there. Not once did he get me in those Lakers seats.
Did you get to go? I heard you had a yacht. Did you get to go on the boat?
I did not go on the boat either. Krasny got that. When you get him on the podcast, you ask him about the yacht and the seats, because I didn't get that.
Yeah, I've heard, obviously, Norm, who unfortunately just passed away a few months ago, but what a titan in the industry, and certainly a character on so many different levels, and obviously very key and early on in the whole podcasting space as well. But so many stories, and we owe obviously a lot of our success, or our business model, I guess, to Norm and the things that he created, and you got to be right there in the thick of it, which to me is incredibly cool. Did him and Peter work together?
Yeah, a little bit. They did. When Peter was the CEO, he wasn't the CEO for very long, because if you ever ask him about it, I don't think it was even a year, and he got the call from Joel, who had gone to become president of CBS Radio, when they were ending the management agreement, and Westwood wasn't going to be managed by CBS anymore. And that was a very dark day for the company, because we all thought CBS was going to buy Westwood and make it part of the whole Viacom enterprise, if you will, but that never happened.
So I don't understand. So they managed Westwood One, but didn't own it?
They owned the majority of they were the majority shareholder of it, but they didn't own it fully. We thought they'd buy the outs. Don't forget, Westwood was its own separately traded stock at one point.
I see.
Under the symbol WON. Of course, the big joke was it was called, at the end, Westwood 1 1/8. That's about what it was worth. So it was fun. I was fortunate enough to get some options and sell it before it was down to 0.001 1/8. But yeah, it was managed by CBS, and they provided the CEO, which was Joel. It was Shane Coppola, then it was Peter, and then when that relationship ended, that was that. And Peter, I think, sat out the end of his contract before he went to start Compass Media Networks.
I see. So CBS then sold their ownership in the company?
Yeah, they ended the management agreement and any ownership stake in it. And then Westwood was ostensibly on its own until the Gores Group came in, the venture capital firm, and purchased the company. And then eventually it was Dial Global, and then eventually it was Cumulus, and that's where they sit today.
2011. So John and Lou Dickey purchased Citadel. And how do you fit into all that?
Well, I had struck up a relationship with John mostly. I think the first deal we did was when John got sideways with Premier over, I want to say it was Ryan Seacrest. There was some deal, and we had Billy Bush, and he called. He goes, "Hey, you still want to do that Billy Bush deal?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to get on there." He goes, "Well, what are you going to do for me?" And it was only John could do it. I said, "Well, I'm going to give you the show." He goes, No. You're going to have to give me something." So I ended up going to Rod Sherwood, who was the CEO at Westwood at the time. And I said, we're going to give him, we ended up settling at 12.5%. He wanted 15. His only job would want every point he could get out of you. It was a great negotiating. And he got us, we gave him 12.5% of the revenue, and he put Billy Bush on all his radio stations at Cumulus. So I became friendly with John. I always had a good relationship. I know a lot of people have interesting things to say, but the guy was a very bright person and a very good seller too, by the way. Not as good as Costan. Nobody's good as that guy. But you can tell him I said. So if you're listening, Peter, I was pretty good, but you were always better. So anyway, they told me first they were going to buy Westwood, that I should sit tight and I'm going to get a chance to move up the chain and the ladder. And I'm like, "Oh, that's great." And then they said, "No, now we're going to buy Citadel. And as soon as we get everything together, we're going to hire you to come in and you're going to be our head of affiliate sales and operations. You know the network." And I said, "Great." As a matter of fact, I signed my contract with them, and there was a clause that if the Citadel deal was to fall apart, that they would pay me a fee because I was going to leave Westwood, but it didn't come to pass that way. I mean, I had the protection, but I remember it was the end. Well, that was when we first got Benztown into the fold, because that was the first deal I did with Mike McVeigh, was the NAB in Chicago.
That's right.
And we came out there and you came and said, "You got to get me in. You got to get me in there." And I said, "Well, we'll see what we can do." And again, as only John could do, I told him, "Well, the rev percentages are like this." And he goes, "No, you got to switch those percentages and tell Chachi we'll do it, but we're getting our percentage." And, you were smart enough to know the way to get in the door was to do that deal. And you did. And it was smart because it still has you in. And I'm sure you have a much better deal today. But yeah, that's how I got involved with those guys. And, they were good to me.
I'll never forget that, man. You and Pitch and Moss and I went to Chicago and pitched you and Mike in, I think the Hyatt there. And I was so incredibly nervous, and we got a good response. And then you wanted me to I digitally voiced this deck we had put together so you could send it to John. And poor Massa had to, because we were sharing a hotel room. And so I had to, revoice this thing like 50 times because I'm so nervous when I was doing it. But that deal all happened incredibly quickly. That was maybe August, September. And we had that deal basically done by the end of the year.
It was the first deal I did when we got back, and we told John we wanted to do it. And of course, well, you probably remember, because part of that was then Mike and I had the unfortunate task to go and lay off the entire ABC production library team, including Bill St. James and the flashback show. And I want to say there was another show that we had to lay off too, but I remember McVeigh was in Atlanta, and I called him up and I said, you need to get on a plane and meet me tomorrow morning in New York. He goes, why? I go, because John just told me we got to fire the whole squad over there at Columbus Circle at ABC because we're giving Chachi basically all the production libraries. So everything, ABC, I guess the ones that were, they just called them country or rock or AC. You had your Benztown libraries, but you were going to take over those libraries, which you still have.
Still do today.
But we had to, I remember, I'm like, we love Chachi, but now I got to go fire all these people. So McVeigh and I are sitting in a conference room and there was like 12 of them there and we're like handing out the packages. I felt like George Clooney and Up in the Air, handing out it's all in the package there. This could be a new beginning for you. And they're like, you guys, giving us the finger. Like, I can't believe it. But they were so well compensated. And John said, this is a no-brainer. You're going to save us 7 figures and your guy Chachi's going to get his stuff and he's going to take care of all of our imaging and production needs. And this is going to be great. And that was, that's how that whole thing
You guys you were right. It all worked out. At that point, I remember Mike saying to me, are your eyes bigger than your stomach? And I'm like, nah, don't worry about it. We got this. But in all honesty, my eyes were bigger than my stomach, but we were able to figure it out. And that is, back to when you guys had to go to New York, that is very difficult to do. And I felt for every one of the people on that team, because it was an incredibly talented team of producers. And, they'd worked on those libraries and the shows for many, many years, and we were stepping into some really big shoes. And so I don't mean to minimize that at all. And I know that was not an easy day for you or Mike either, but I am so grateful for you guys, everything that you did for us and stepping up for us, because that architecture, that deal, I swear to you, Dennis, is still pretty much the same. We still work off of the same master contract that you and Mike put together. Your signature is still on it. There's like 8 or 9 amendments since then.
That's funny.
But it's still the same agreement. Not crazy?
That's
13
awesome.
years later, 14 years later. Yeah. So,
and that was when the birth of Gary occurred. And I was like, who the hell's Gary?
Our robot.
And I remember seeing it. I guess, did they call it a meme back then? I can't even remember. But I think Masha sent over, well, here's Gary. I'm like, so there's this cartoon character. Then I think we came to, it may have not been the NAB. It was one of the next shows. And I see this guy comes up behind me in this costume. He grabs me. He goes, this is Gary. I'm like, what? Who's really in there?
I remember the Dallas show. We have that picture
somewhere. It was
somewhere.
the Dallas show.
Yes.
Oh my God. 100%. Yeah. And it was like, I took pictures with Gary. I'm like, this is Gary. Okay. How did you come up with the name? I still don't even remember how it was Gary.
It actually comes from our partners in Germany, and they had worked at a radio station. And, at a radio station, a lot of listeners will call in wanting free tickets and prizes and so forth. And so they very ingeniously would forward those listeners to a voicemail box, that they named their marketing director, who happened to be named Gary. So they'd go, oh, no problem. We'll get you some tickets. Let us forward you to our marketing director, Gary. And it was just nothing more than an empty voicemail box. But
that's awesome.
Yeah. So in 2013, you are on Radio Inc.'s 40 Most Powerful People in Radio. You're flying high. Cumulus has bought Citadel. They've bought Susquehanna. You're getting ready at that point, right? For them to buy Westwood. Is that all in that time period?
Lou came and told us, I got good news. He told Mike Pallad and I, who was running sales, we're buying Westwood. I'm like, I spent my last several years trying to get out of that place, and now we're going back to that place.
This is the third time for you, by the way.
It was the third time, yeah. And it was great because it was the first time I was exposed to the meetings with the bankers and the financial entities and going through the questions and the books. I remember Lou called because I didn't know what my role was going to be. I assumed, wow, this is going to be great. I may come back as the conquering hero. I'll be the, I don't know, chief operating, whatever. I didn't. One thing you learn about Bloomberg is titles aren't that important. You just want to make a good living and make a good salary and get to do what you love doing. And you call yourself whatever you want. But he called me It was right around Labor Day. And he said, hey, because I think I gave up my whole summer. I was on my way to Hershey Park with my kids to take them somewhere because I did nothing but work through the summer on it. And he goes, thank you. And, you're part of the family. This is all going to work out. I go, well, what's my role going to be? He goes, well, don't worry about it. Okay. That's what I should have known to worry. And long story short, he came to me right before the end of the year. Well, first I was told, go have lunch with Charles Steinhauer. I'm like, okay. So we had lunch together, and I didn't know how this was all going to play out. And Lou came and said, well, this is going to be great. You're going to be the head of affiliate sales at the Westwood One. I'm like, Lou, that's the job I had when you hired me to come here. You're demoting me. He goes, we can't look at it that way. I said, how else am I supposed to look at it? I thought I was going to go back and be like head of the operations. No, I'm doing that. And the worst part is you're not cutting my salary. So now you put a big red X on my back. They're going to be like, what do we need to pay this guy all this money to be the affiliate guy? We'll get somebody else for that. Don't worry. We got you protected. So I ended up going back, but I went back to the job I had when I left. So I had my old job, and, I reported to Charles, and I enjoyed it because Charles was great in that we had one meeting and he goes, listen, you know what you're doing. We both know what we're doing. We can work off of each other. We can figure it out. I know you might have liked to have this job, but I'll do this and you'll do what you're doing. And you know what? It worked out. And, again, another guy who's a great mind, who knows the business very well. And I did my affiliate thing back. I figured, well, I'm going to be like Rocky, whatever movie I do, I'm always going to be Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, that was the deal. And, so I did it for a couple of years, and, I never signed a new contract. Charles was always like, did you ever sign that contract? I go, I think it's in my briefcase. I'm not sure. He's like, I said, listen, I'm going to come to work tomorrow. You know me. All I do is work. I come in, I stay, I do. Don't worry. It'll be fine. And so, ultimately my entrepreneurial itch came in the form of, Sun and Fun Media and Rob Koblaz giving me the opportunity. And, that was, 2018. I made my last move where I sit today.
And tell us a little bit about Key Networks and Sun and Fun.
So, it's interesting how it's such a small business, and people like yourself that I'm proud to call friends. I get a call from Julie Talbot, and she knew I wasn't happy at Westwood. There'd been a bunch of changes, new people coming in. And she said, darling, I got something for you. They're looking for a chief revenue officer over at Sun and Fun Media. And we had repped Sun and Fun Media at Westwood. They had since gone to Premier. And I said, Sun and Fun Media? It's like, is that really what I want to do? So I had the conversation with Rob, and he wanted me to move to Orlando. And I said, look, I've got young ones in junior high, high school. It's really not what I want to do. And we kind of tabled it and said, well, it's not going to work. Okay. I guess a month later, they put these blind ads in Radio Inc. I think at the time you see them down there. It's like looking for a chief revenue officer for a company. They don't tell you who, what, where. And I got calls from a couple of friends of mine said, you should apply for this. Got your name all over it. I'm like, I don't want to do it. My luck, I'm going to apply for it. And it's going to go to Suzanne Grimes. And she's going to be like, oh, you want to leave? So I'm like, I don't know. So I decided to send in my resume and apply for it. And I get a call from Rob, and he goes, hey, I see you answered an ad in Radio Inc. for a chief revenue officer. He goes, that's my job. I go, oh, that's the job we were talking about a month ago. So we agreed to meet at the CRS, and we spent 2 hours together. And in those 2 hours, you know how after 5 or 10 minutes, you can tell if this is the person I want to be working with and this is what I want to do. I knew within 5-10 minutes, this is the guy I wanted to work with and this is what I wanted to do. And he said, look, would you like to start a syndication network? And I said, absolutely. I think I could do it. It'd be my crowning achievement for all the other stuff I did in my career. So I agreed to take the job, and I started as chief revenue officer at Sun and Fun Media. And then we started the network about a year after that when we hired Bill O'Reilly and brought him back to radio. So it was a good first hire. And then we ultimately got Bloomberg. Ironically, there I was back doing. I guess it's like once I do something, I leave, but I still never. I always come back somehow, some way. So we launched that, and we've been through a few machinations, but we're going to be it'll be 6 years for me with Sun and Fun in May of 24. And with Key Networks, we'll be entering our 5th year. We have country shows, we've got rock shows, we've got other representation deals that we do, and we're doing syndication. We've got a sales team, we've got compliance and traffic, and it's a small network. I mean, we'll never be Westwood, and I don't think we want to be that. But we want to be a nice boutique network and service our clients and our advertisers well. And we try to do that. It's hard. It's very hard. I will say the one thing about all of affiliate sales, I hope it's going to be there in 10 years. Will it? We don't have a crystal ball. I think it will be. There's less and less people that do what we do. And it's a specialization. Look, it's different than calling an agency to negotiate a deal on a mathematical CPM or CPP basis or based upon impressions. So, you're calling and trying to get a show on and trying to convince them why. And, the programmers have been taken away with a lot of their power, the consolidation. Heck, when I first started doing it, there was no consolidation. So you'd go into a market and you might have 12, 15 owners in a market. You go in now, you might have one or two, and maybe there's only one for a format. So if one company owns all the news talks and you can't get on, you're done. You're out. And it's very tough. It's very frustrating. The one thing I do know, and I learned this back at WGN, treat people like you want to be treated, return your calls and correspondence, and be a good listener. Listen to what the client wants and try to serve them as best you can. And that will serve you well. I think if you do those things to this day, even though it's harder because people don't return the calls or the correspondence, people don't usually listen, and people treat people like garbage. That's a lot of times. So.
I think it's fantastic advice. I completely agree. So when you look at the landscape today, and let's back up, if you look at your pedigree and the people that have mentored you, Lou and John, and love Lou or John or hate them, they're very Ivy League educated, very bright. Peter Kozan, who's one of the most brilliant people I've met. You've worked with Charles, who I think is an incredibly bright. Craig Kitchen, you are co-chair of the Radio Hall of Fame with Craig. I mean, you really are immersed. You had Norm Patitz as a mentor, to some degree. So I don't think there's probably many people who have a better perspective on this business than you. You're an elite few. Where do you see this all going? Let's say next year and then in the next, 5 to 10.
Well, I love the people that write these stories. And I was just saying this to Jeff Sotolano not too long ago from Odyssey. I said, you know what? I would love it if you guys would get a PR person to talk about the fact that, your stations are doing pretty well. I'm looking at some of these numbers and, kudos to you in a time when all they talk about is bankruptcy and debt. The content that you have and the products that you have are pretty darn good. Why doesn't we talk about that? Why is it we're always putting us, well, we're not podcasters. Well, we're not digital. Well, we're not streaming. It's great content. I mean, it's all about the content. And so if the content's good, it's really about how you distribute it. So they want to say that R word, radio is a bad word, and it's audio. Okay. But at the end of the day, if I've got Bill O'Reilly, I'm going to push him to a podcast. I want to push him through a smart speaker, through the radio. I don't care how you consume it. So you just have to embrace all the different technology and figure out how you get a piece of it. One of the challenges we have is Bloomberg's a great example. So we have the license for Bloomberg for terrestrial radio. Well, that's great, except in 2024, if you don't have a digital footprint, you're really in a tough spot because you're only limited to what you can sell. You got to have that digital footprint. You got to have the ability to have your content and be able to sell it through all the different mediums. So getting back to your original question, I think the future, it can be very bright if you figure out a good piece of content and how to run it through all the different distribution models and then get the advertisers to embrace that. And eventually, when I go out to sell it, I'm selling you everything in this box. It's almost like when I was at Bloomberg, we sold Bloomberg Print, Bloomberg Internet, Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television. So it was Bloomberg, but it was everything that encompassed it. And I think that's the way you got to go. So if it's Benztown, or it's our country show or our rock show, it's just got to be everything that we do has to be pushed to all those different elements. It's got to.
In terms of your different roles, you've been on the air, you've done play-by-play, color commentary, you've done affiliate relations, you've done ad sales. You now are a COO and you're running a network. So you're doing a little bit of all of it when you're in that role. What's your favorite?
Boy, it's a great question because Joe Hollander told me this once. He said, when things go bad, like you're having a bad day and you can't get anything done, go back to the thing you really know and the thing that you really like and that you're good at. And so I guess I'm answering the question. If I'm having a really rough day, I may just pick up the phone and call an old colleague at a station and say, hey, what do you think about our rock show, Dave and Chuck? Or what do you think about our country show? Or how about trying to find something with Bloomberg? Go back and do that, which you know you can do, because I've put more radio shows, some not very good, on the air in places that I don't even care to have to get a map out. By the way, you can't see it. I keep my 2014 Radio Metro map from Nielsen because Bruce Sapovitz told me, we're never going to print those anymore. You get it digitally. I'm like, I like a map. I want to look at it. So I'm going to keep this up on my wall forever as long as I can, even though the markets are probably all messed up. But no, I would say the affiliate sales, I loved it. I think I was pretty good at it. I think I'm still okay at it. I say now I think I'm okay because I always laugh. I call Chachi. I'll call you up and say, I can't get any of my shows on. I stink. Horrible. This is awful. And maybe the shows aren't very good. No, maybe it's you. And I'm like, God, that Dennis Green's calling again. Who was it? You'll laugh. I went to the Dolphins-Titans game. You know, I had to get the Dolphins in here somewhere. I took Max, my son, and I saw Grace Blazer, who runs the Dolphins Network in WIOD down there. And we were talking to, we introduced me to somebody, and she goes, I've known this guy for like 30 years. He calls and he's, pushes me on stuff and tries to get me to take stuff. I go, and you were always really good to not take as much as you could. She goes, we got a few deals done. I said, yeah, usually you beat me up, but we got a few deals done. But she was talking about Sil Scaglione, who was her GM in Philly. And she was telling somebody about, when that Dennis Green guy calls, you better just grab yourself around the ankles and hold on tight. He's going to take you. I'm like, that's what you thought of me? I was like the nice one trying to figure out how to get a deal done. I wasn't trying to rake you over the coals. That's co-said. He'll take your children and take their children and their inheritance. Are you kidding me? By the way, I forgot the best story about Bloomberg. Peter didn't like going out on the road that much, but I was up for getting a deal done with WBBM Television, Channel 2 in Chicago, the CBS affiliate for Bloomberg TV. And it was us and Reuters. And the guy who was working at Reuters had formerly worked at Bloomberg. I didn't know him. Peter did. So he goes, I want to come with you on the pitch, which means he wants to. And I'm like, I got the whole thing I want to do. We ended up with the GM, the news director, the sales manager, all in the big room. And Peter loves holding court at this stuff. So we go in and we make the pitch. And I'm like, look, you can take, all right, it's your client. I'm like, listen, you got on a plane to come. You take the lead. It's fine. Well, that's all I had to say. So he starts it and he's doing his thing and selling them. We finish the meeting. There's the reception area when you get out. And so he asks the guy behind the desk, hey, do you got a notepad? He goes, listen, the gentleman that just went in for that meeting goes, yeah, could you give this to him when he comes out? So I said, can I see what he wrote on there? So he wrote to the guy who was at Reuters that went into the meeting, and we had the meeting first. It said, better luck next time. See you in New York. That's what he wrote on the note and left it for the guy. Honest to God, true story. And we got the business too. I said, that was pretty cocky. He goes, you think that guy's getting the business after that pitch? Come on.
That is awesome. That is absolutely
yeah,
awesome. Oh my God. Thank you for sharing that. This is my last question. And actually, I just want to learn a little bit more. Tell us about your work with the Radio Hall of Fame. I know you've been doing that for many years, and it's a phenomenal event. And hopefully we can be more involved here in 2024.
I'd love you to do that, Chachi. And, I got my picture on the wall. That was this year. I was addressing the crowd. Craig and I were up there, but I was trying to get the crowd fired up. So I had that picture made for my wall. It's a labor of love. I've been involved in the committee for over 20 years. I've been fortunate to chair it with Craig for the last, I think, 5 years now. It's amazing because you get to learn about all these broadcasters from around the country. Some you didn't know. And it's kind of like this. You start to think about all the things that you did, and you think about all the things they did, and they paved the way for people like us to come in and have the careers that we have. And I just wish more people in the industry would realize that and take the time, once a year to support that event. We get good support, but selfishly, it could always be better. But we'll do the class of 2024. We'll start the process February 1st. We'll open up radiohalloffame.com. You can go in and you can make a suggestion of somebody you would like to nominate for induction. And then the committee will get together in April. And then we will select 24 names that will be voted upon by the industry executives. And 6 of those will be elevated to induction status. And then the committee will select 2. Usually they are not broadcasters. They're more executives. So we were fortunate, like Erica Farber, we just recently inducted this past year. We
Deborah
inducted
Parenti.
Charles Warfield from Inner City. We inducted Jeff Smulyan. So we induct 2 industry executives. And then we also have our Legends inductees, where there are 12 posthumous inductions that we make. And we do that to recognize people that might have trouble being selected in a vote, but are still very much deserving of being in the Radio Hall of Fame. And then we'll all culminate that in usually the last week of October, first week of November, with the induction ceremony, which we don't know where we'll be next year. The Museum of Broadcast was recently sold, the building we were in Chicago. So we're not with a home right now. So I don't know if we're going to be in Chicago next year. I don't think we'll be back in New York. We may take it to a new place we've never been, but we'll make that decision sometime in the early part of 2024. And it's great. Last year, we had 2,500 names that were brought to us as potential nominees. And my weekends, I always say from February till the end of March, vetting through that pretty much takes up the time, because you got to read through and figure out who should advance to the list, and then put information on them so the committee can vet through it. But it's a great process. I love it. Every time I say, and those who know me, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. They're like, you're doing this. Of course you're doing this. What else are you going to do? I said, yeah, but let somebody else do it. I don't think anybody wants to do it. So I'll keep doing it as long as they want. And I told Craig, you're not leaving this. You're doing it with me. I'm waiting for him to say, it's all yours. And I'm like, then I'm calling you, Chachi, and you can be the coach. But I am not doing it by myself.
I think it's an incredible institution, and thank you for doing it. I think it means so much to the industry. I also want to personally thank you for everything you've done for my career and in Benztown. And also thank you for taking the time to be on this podcast, and finally for all those Peter Kozan stories, because those are priceless. Listen,
I don't know if you've had Peter on yet, but you should have him on. I'll be curious to see if he says anything about me in a nice way, but I'm sure
he will. He speaks very fondly of you.
You got to have him on. I mean, it's about time.
I'll work on it, my friend. I'll work on it. Hey, Dennis, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Chachi. Anytime, and congrats on all your success. My best to Masa and the whole team, and look forward to seeing you in 2024. And anytime you need me to play the role of Gary, if I could put my fat butt in the costume, I'm happy to do it.
May take you up on that. Thanks for listening to Chachi Loves Everybody. If you like the show, we hope you leave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends. Make sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This has been a Benztown McVeigh podcast production. Hosted and researched by Dave Chachi Dennis. Executive producer, Darren Silva. Producer and editor, Jake Urbanik. Show coordinator, Estefania Padilla. Marketing and distribution, Suzanne Aksu and Robbie Gessel.